Hello, everybody. Welcome to another installment of Biology in the Basement. Final review. Here we are talking about the unity and diversity of life today. But before we begin, we must have a fact of the day so that we can get started. And it turns out that the ancient Mongol warriors were said to have worn silk vests, as an arrow hitting silk does not break the silk, but the ends end up embedding the arrow in the flesh wrapped in silk. And then the arrow can be removed by gently teasing the silk open. So it was basically like wrapping your arrows in silk so that they could just gently be pulled out without tearing as much flesh. Pretty smart guys. Who knew? Anyways, unity and diversity, fancy names for similarities and differences in life. And we look at those similarities and differences to classify living things. Right? We say, hey, these guys have a lot of similarities. Let's put them in the same group. But not that many similarities, so let's only put them in these certain groups together. But once we get more specific, we got to make up other groups. And then we'll give them names according to those groups. What I've just described to you is classification. Classification includes taxonomy, which is the making of the groups, and nomenclature, which is the naming of all of the groups and eventually the species. Naming a species goes by what's called binomial nomenclature, which is a fancy name for binomial, to name, nomenclature, naming system, hence to name naming system. And that to name naming system that we use is we use the genus and the species of each organism. We capitalize the genus and lowercase for the species, and we have our scientific name, usually found in italics. Now, classification has existed for many years. As we learn more, we adjust our groups. But now, what's cool is we've learned so much about evolution that we can even be more accurate. And thanks to gel electrophoresis, we can also look at the DNA to be even more accurate as to how closely these species are related, and even look at who evolved from who, which is what we know as phylogeny, the new form of studying evolution as species change throughout the ages. And as we get more fossil evidence, we can figure these things out. And one of the pages from your textbook does a great job of explaining how we used to think that the crab was further related to the barnacle and a clam like the limpet. But then we realized that these fancy structures that the barnacle has that sticks a segmented arm out to capture food and bring it in is much more advanced than what these clams have, and much more closely related to the segmented bodies and structures that are found in the crabs, and the DNA shows that. And so we've adjusted our cladogram, which is that diagram that shows that. So that's what we use. And we have these levels of classification, these groups, and the groups go from very large and very broad all the way down to very specific, hence the name species, right? So when we talk about a kingdom, for example, we're talking about all the animals. But then this group becomes a little bit smaller when we're only talking about animals with backbones. It becomes even smaller when we only talk about mammals, and it becomes smaller when we only talk about the mammals that eat meat, and we only talk about the mammals that are part of the dog family until we get to just one species. Now, when I was going through high school and college, they were shifting from the 5 to the 6 kingdoms because they found some great differences in the bacteria. So they had to come up with a whole nother category called the domain to include these 2 different groups of bacteria. And then we have the 3 domains for the 2 groups of bacteria, as well as all of the eukaryotes. And so it's a little bit different now. So these guys are the prokaryotes and these are the eukaryotes, right? We looked at it as a spreadsheet, and then you guys took over and you covered the rest. Of course, the other things that we covered in this unit were autotrophs, right? Make their own food. Heterotrophs, consumers, right? They have to consume, get their food from an outside source. We looked at all the different types of heterotrophs, all the different types of consumers. Hey, watch out for this guy. I've pulled a tick out of myself. Adele has pulled a tick out of him. We've been pulling ticks off of Sam. And, we're not venturing that far into the woods some of these times. So just remember the ticks are out there. They are parasites. They don't want to kill you. So don't worry about that. They just want to suck your blood and keep you alive so you can be a constant source of food to them until they die or let go. So don't worry about the tick. Worry about yourself and getting Lyme disease. But remember, not all ticks carry Lyme disease. Just be vigilant about it, though. Then we talked about viruses, right? How do we classify them? What are they? Right? They kind of fall out of all of our definitions of living things, so we just refer to them as an infectious particle. We say they have 2 parts, either DNA or RNA, not both. All living things have both. They need the DNA to hold the information and the RNA to put it into action, where viruses just have one or the other, where either they try to insert their DNA into the host or they just try to shoot their RNA in so that the RNA will intercept and have them make copies of themselves and the virus particle. So we can leave that one still up to debate. But like I've said in some other reviews, the virus has done a good job of making itself very well known on a global scale. So it may not be a living thing, but it's definitely here. Okay, Andreyko signing off. We've got a few more units to go. Next one is the human body.